or illegal? I've been waiting a long time to do this, and they go and ring the bells and make me wait even longer. But it really is a pleasure to be here today. And before I start, I want to introduce some of the other people that have joined us from Queen's Park here. I can see my parliamentary assistant, MPP for Barrie, Anne Hogarth, is with us today. Two colleagues in the House from the New Democratic Party, the MPP Jen French from the Oshawa area, and somebody that's had an awful lot to do with this issue, I think everybody knows. That's my colleague Sherry DeNovo from Parkdale High Park. Also my colleague, Minister Deepika Damala from the Peel region, Mississauga region, my neighbour, being from Oakville. I think that's all I see right now. I hope I haven't left anybody out. But let's get on with this. Oh, is there somebody else here?
Rick Nichols.
Rick Nichols? Rick?
Yes.
Thank you very much for being here. Rick Nichols, the Conservative MP who's joined us today. Thanks for coming, Rick. I want to thank each and every one of you for being here today. It really is a pleasure to be here. The work that you do each and every day keeps this province safe, and our government's extremely grateful for the work that you do. Now, we know that you serve and protect your communities with pride. We know that the first word in your vocabularies often is the word action. And when that happens, you're rushing into a burning building, you're pulling a child out of a car on the QEW, you're responding to a crime, you're trying to subdue an inmate, or you're trying to calm an explosive situation. We know that those actions put both your physical and your mental health at risk. However, while the physical injuries are generally pretty easy to diagnose and they're usually pretty evident, psychological injuries create more of a challenge, and that's for a number of reasons. Now today, with the full support of our Premier, as Minister of Labour, I'm bringing forward a plan that's going to address those challenges. One that's going to address and is going to improve prevention. It's going to improve resiliency to post-traumatic stress disorder for our first responders. Now we all know, everybody in this room knows, that sometimes in the past, the efforts we've made simply haven't been enough to protect our first responders, and they've been diagnosed with PTSD. We have some people in the room today, I'm not going to point them out, but we have some people in the room today that have lived experience. Some of them have offered to talk to the media later, if that's something you would like to do. But we know, everybody I think here today knows, we need to provide our first responders with the same support they provide us when we need them the most. In just a few minutes down the hall in the legislature, I'll be introducing the Supporting Ontario First Responders Act. Explaining that what I will do is I will make my statement. I have to introduce that bill at 1:15. I will leave at that point in time and come back and answer questions. But if passed by the House, this legislation is going to provide a sense of security to our first responders. Now, every working person that's covered by the WSIB is also covered for traumatic mental stress and for PTSD. I think a lot of people don't understand that. But obviously, along with that, there's a claim process. And that claim process can be very evidence-based, and it can be very onerous for somebody that's undergoing the symptoms of PTSD. And because our first responders are twice as likely to get PTSD in the first place, we're going to create a presumption that PTSD that's diagnosed in first responders is a result of the worker's employment. Their claims to the WSIB then will be automatically approved without that process. If a first responder is diagnosed with PTSD, it's going to be presumed to have occurred because of the work that you have done, and they will be fully covered. This presumption will apply to police officers. It will apply to firefighters. It will apply to paramedics. It will also apply to workers in correctional institutions and secure youth justice facilities. It will apply to dispatchers of police, firefighter, and ambulance services. And it will apply to First Nations emergency response teams. This legislation is part of a comprehensive strategy that we know we needed to address PTSD for first responders. It also gives me the ability to require each and every employer of workers that's covered by the presumption to provide me with their PTSD prevention plans as Minister of Labour, and I will publish those plans. To summarize, the Supporting Ontario's First Responders Act, if passed, will provide presumptive PTSD coverage for first responders, and it permits me as a Minister of Labour to request prevention plans from affected employers and ensure that they are publicized. I'm very proud to be a part of this government that is introducing this legislation. Very proud to be a part of what I hope will be a supportive legislature. I would like to thank all our stakeholders for working with us. Sometimes things don't happen as quickly as you would like them to, and that applies to the Minister of Labour as well. But we're here today. But because of the culture and because of the stigma that's associated with this issue, I need your help, and you need each other's help. I want to particularly thank Parkdale High Park MPP Sherry DeNovo for her early and constant advocacy on this file. Some people latch onto an issue before other people do. It's true of politicians as well. Sherry has held the feet to the fire of the legislature on this issue. 5 times I think you brought it forward. We took your idea. I hope you'll agree that we've improved on it, and it's something that is working for everybody. As many of you will know, this legislation, though, doesn't stand by itself. Presumptive legislation applies to people that already have PTSD. What we need to do is ensure that people don't get PTSD in the first place. So it builds on 4 prevention initiatives that I announced earlier this month. In March of this year, you'll be seeing a public radio and digital awareness campaign that's aimed at increasing awareness of PTSD and reducing the stigma that's associated with it. That's when I really need the union's help. That's when I need the association's help. That's when I need the stakeholders' help, because that's when I really need you to step to the plate. There are first responders who don't step forward because they think their colleagues or their brothers and sisters will think less of them, or they won't see them as a trusted or as a reliable partner. Or maybe their employer will think maybe they hired the wrong person, and maybe they won't get the promotions that they want. But let me tell you, it takes a very strong, sensible and courageous person to step forward and to get that help. I need everyone in this room to share that message with the people they work with. Based on a very, very successful event we held earlier this year, we'll also be holding an annual leadership summit, which I will host to highlight best practices, to recognize leaders in this field, and to monitor progress in dealing with PTSD. This is going to give those involved a chance to exchange ideas, sure they have the most recent information in this ever-evolving area. Because the information around PTSD includes training and prevention, treatment is constantly changing. We're going to be enhancing our research efforts right here at home by providing grants to further understand the triggers and optimal PTSD prevention techniques. In Ontario, since 2003, we've seen a 40% drop in workplace injuries. Imagine if we could do that for PTSD. Just apply those same figures to PTSD. And finally, before I turn it over to my colleague, Minister Nackby, because both big cities and small towns in Ontario face these same problems, we're going to be making this information as widely available as possible through a free web-enabled PTSD resource toolkit. We're going to share content that's tailored to meet the needs of employers, and each of the first responder sectors across this province will have equal access to the information. So that's the plan. I'd like to thank Ron Kaluski and the Public Health Safety Association for hosting that run. Thank you. It's a comprehensive plan, which is what our first responders have asked for and what they deserve. Evidence shows that first responders are at least twice as likely as the general population to suffer from PTSD. And it's usually the result of exposure to traumatic events experienced in the line of duty while they're protecting us and our families. So this, I hope today, is a new beginning and a way forward in the prevention of the treatment of PTSD for a first responder community in Ontario. and I look forward to your support in the legislature. So thank you all for coming out today on such very, very short notice. I'd now like to thank Minister Nakvi, who's been such a supportive colleague on this, to say a few words, and I am going to the legislature, but I will be back. Thank you.